And so, like I said, Alan, appreciate you taking time to talk with me. For those of you who don't know who Alan Crone is, he is an attorney in Shelby County, the former chief counsel for the Tennessee Department of Employment Security, and also special counsel for Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland from 2015 to 2019. Alan, thanks a lot for taking some time with us.
My pleasure. Good to talk to you, Mr. Mayor.
We have a lot of questions coming in from folks that are concerned about unemployment, about what the job landscape looks like. And so figured we just ask the professionals and the experts a few questions and maybe get some of their questions answered.
I'll do my best.
Well, all right. We'll just kind of fire them off to you and you can answer them as best you can.
Okay.
And so one person said, I'm out of work. How do I apply for unemployment benefits?
Well, the quickest way, well, really the only way, is to go to jobs4tn.gov. That's the Tennessee Department of Labor's website. That's the place to start. They also have, and I say they, the Department of Labor also has a really good FAQ website that went up late last week that answers a lot of specific questions. But you go to that website and you start answering questions from there. And my understanding is that it's fully operational in terms of being able to take applications for all types of unemployment benefits.
Is there an option for someone who doesn't have access to internet?
You know, I think online is the only way you can apply for unemployment benefits these days. There's no more. You can't go into a state office like you used to be able to.
Right. All right. So why am I having so much problems with the state applying for benefits?
Well, I think there are probably lots of reasons for that. The most universal answer is prior to last week, the state's computer system was set up to handle unemployment compensation benefits in kind of a traditional way. And that software package has been in place since the late 60s. And really, except for some benefits going up or down, unemployment benefits have remained pretty constant since the 60s. And so those software packages haven't been upgraded. In fact, most of them, the ones in Tennessee and Arkansas and Mississippi, and I think I saw a report that it was probably 20 or 30 states, those unemployment benefit software packages are based on COBOL language. That's in computer terms, that's an ancient language. It almost would be like if your shopping list was written in Latin. And so those software packages were fine for administering unemployment benefits. And I know when I was chief counsel of the department back in the 90s, there was talk of upgrading that package then. And for budgetary reasons and for just plain pain in the neck reasons, they didn't do it then, and I suspect they haven't done it since because they really didn't need to. Well, if you fast forward to the CARES Act, the CARES Act added a whole universe of people into that system that weren't in the system before, and added them in a way that is contrary to the setup of the system. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, before all of this started, the only way you were entitled to unemployment benefits were if you were a W-2 employee. You were on somebody's payroll and they gave you a W-2, you paid into the unemployment system. Well, the unemployment system has your work history, it has how much you paid in, it has who your employers were, as all of that system, that robust system built up literally over decades. Well, when the federal government added independent contractors and self-employed people and gig workers and all these folks that were completely outside that system and didn't have any history with that system or had limited history in that system, that universe had to be added, and it had to be added in such a way, not just, it had to be completely rebuilt, and it had to be built out in this COVID language. Well, it took them several weeks in Tennessee. It took them several weeks to get there. My understanding is, in talking with some folks at the state, that they are there now, They're able to accept applications for all of these people, and that's why it's taken so long. I think they've caught up. I got to give them a little bit of kudos. I was critical the last couple of weeks about the lack of information on their website. If you go to their website now, you can find out a lot more information about your general situation than you could even a week ago. It's hard to find. You got to keep clicking. You've got to go to the Department of Labor, and there's a banner across the top of the Department of Labor's website that says, click here for COVID or coronavirus related information. You click to that, it goes to the larger state COVID/coronavirus website. You hit on information for small businesses, and then it has unemployment benefits for employers and employees. You hit on employees, and then you can start to get to the frequently asked questions page. So I know that's not a short answer, but that's the complete answer on why it's taken so long. And, again, I think the state has worked very hard on this. They've had, not only have they had to make modifications to their system, but they've had to make modifications to their system in an old language while everybody's working at home. So I think we've just kind of gotten accustomed in our society to things being ready like that. It just took them some time. Now, the good news is, hopefully, everyone who applies now, they should get benefits back retroactively to when they qualified for them. So hopefully, within a week or two, you should start seeing good-sized checks rolling in under that unemployment benefit.
That's great. Software update since the 60s makes me feel a little bit better about our City of Jackson software we have going on.
It sure does.
So what if I have already exhausted all of my benefits for losing my job before the outbreak happened, and I still cannot find a job? Now what?
Well, the Department of Labor, the Federal Department of Labor, issued a clarification on that on Friday, which is good news for those folks. You would still be entitled to the 13 weeks of Federal CARES Act benefits. That's the $600 a week above and beyond your previous state benefits. So if go ahead and apply. Now the only you may have to certify that you can't find a new job based on the COVID, but they are the states are supply that very liberally. So so you're entitled to that, and you may be entitled to 13 additional weeks from that previous application. So I would apply for that as well and see what the state does with that.
All right. So who all is entitled to receive benefits now?
Well, everybody who gets fired is entitled to the same benefits from the state that they've always been entitled to, whether you get fired for the coronavirus or not. If you lose your job or your livelihood because you're taking care of someone with the virus, or you yourself have the virus, or you can't get to work because of a civil order or a quarantine order. Some people are under specific quarantine orders from the Department of Health that's above and beyond maybe your state safer at home order or the governor's safer at home order. All of those folks are entitled to that CARES additional federal money, which is the $600 a week. Let's see. I think I hit all of those points. It's basically if you're the last one is if you can't go to work because your child is home because of the schools are closed, then you would be entitled. And there's also a catch-all that we may come back to on some other answers to some other questions. There's a catch-all that says if you have to quit because of the COVID virus, you're entitled to benefits. I don't know exactly what that means. I think it's intended to be a catch-all to accommodate a lot of different people that might have an unforeseen circumstance. Mm-hmm. So again, you have to certify that under penalty of perjury. So you want to make sure that you're being truthful about it. But I would go ahead and apply if you can honestly articulate a basis for why your situation is caused by COVID, is essentially if you're out of work because of the COVID-19, then you're entitled to those federal benefits.
Okay. And how long can I receive benefits under the new federal guidelines?
You can get those new federal benefits for 13 weeks, and you can receive your state benefits. That's the benefit that's up to $275 a week. That's the normal state unemployment benefits. You can receive those for an additional 13 weeks. So that depends on when you were out of work and so forth. But those benefits are extended for a total of 39 weeks.
All right. And so if I am an independent contractor, should I apply for a PPP loan and unemployment?
Well, you can't apply for them both at the same time. But I think here's where you want to be a little strategic if you're an independent contractor. You might want to go ahead and apply for the PPP loan. That's the Paycheck Protection Program. Those loans should be hopefully available for application this week. Contact your banker. It's best if you go through a bank where you already have a relationship. Talk to that banker, get that process started as much as you can. The Small Business Administration was supposed to issue guidance to them on how to calculate the amount of those loans. Just to recap for everybody, those loans are basically, you take in the case of an independent contractor, you take essentially your average monthly income for 2019, and then you multiply that times 2.5 times to get the total amount of your loan. Now, what's interesting is that I think what's delaying the Small Business Administration's guidance is they're trying to figure out a fair way to calculate an independent contractor's monthly income, because it's really supposed to be your take-home wages, right? Well, with a W-2, an employee, that's pretty easy to calculate. But if you're an independent contractor and you're filing with lots of itemized deductions, obviously the goal there for most people is to show as little income as possible. Well, that may not keep you alive if you're trying to live off of that. So I think they're trying to figure out what's the fairest way to come up with that average monthly income for purposes of calculating that 2.5 number. So if that number ends up being less than $600 a week, then you might want to look at whether or not you want to get that money or go ahead and go for unemployment. Personally, I think what if I were in that situation, what I might consider doing, and everybody's situation is different, but I might go ahead and get the PPP loan, try to stay in business for 8 weeks, pay myself that forgivable amount of payroll for 8 to 10 weeks during the loan period, and then see where you are. That gives you 8 to 10 weeks to kind of keep your business alive and to bank some money, and then maybe get jump started once all of this is over. Let's say, God forbid, that doesn't happen. You get to the end of that 8 to 10 weeks, that money is gone, and you're essentially still out of business. Well, then you could apply for unemployment and have 13 additional weeks from there. So I think it would be hard to do the unemployment first and then come back to the PPP, because in order to get the PPP, you have to certify that you've constantly been in business, at least for a year before February 15th of 2020. So I think you'd want to get the PPP loan first, exhaust it, and then if you're out of business at that point, then that would give you an additional 13 weeks at $600 a week to kind of get things going again. Of course, a lot of it depends on what kind of business you were in, how your business is doing. So if you're in that situation and you've got the ability to get a PPP loan, talk to your banker. Particularly the smaller banks, the small community banks are real up to speed on this. They get briefed by the Tennessee Bankers Association and the Small Business Administration, if not daily, then several times a week. That's where I'm getting a lot of my information from community bankers.
Fantastic. So next question is, I'm an essential employee and I don't feel safe at work. I don't feel safe for my health and I quit my job. And do I qualify?
I think that that person may qualify under that general exception I was talking about. If I were that person, that's what I would apply, and I would say I had to quit my job because of COVID-19, and see what the state does with that. Again, these eligibility criteria are supposed to be interpreted pretty broadly, and I think the idea was that people shouldn't have to sacrifice their health for a paycheck. So that's the basis I would apply under.
Good information. So if my boss cuts my hours at work but did not let me go, can I still get benefits?
Perhaps. And again, that's some clarification that the state put out recently that I think is very helpful. Normally, if your employer significantly reduces your number of hours, then you can draw unemployment for the difference between what you were making and what you ended up making, subject to that $275 a week cap. So the way the Department of Labor is interpreting that is if you are still making at least $275 a week, then you don't qualify for benefits. But if you drop down below that threshold, then you do. And so that then would kick in the $600 a week. I'll be interested to see if they change that interpretation over time, because it seems that that's going to filter out a lot more people. I've had some clients that started down that road, that they reduced their workers' hours, hoping that they could reduce the hours enough that the workers could then get unemployment benefits. And once they came out with that clarification, some of them are choosing to have rolling furloughs, so that the employee can say that their hours were completely cut for a week, and then they get the $600 for the week plus the $275, and just then going to alternate that as they go. We'll see how that works, but that seems to me to be a good workaround if you're an employer and you want to reduce your personnel costs and not prejudice your workers. Now, that particular client I'm thinking of has more than 500 employees. So again, going back to the questioner, hopefully he or she works for a small business that can get a PPP loan and put them back on payroll before they're too far in the hole on this thing. Mayor, I think one thing that I'm hopeful, very, very hopeful, people are going to start seeing as these PPP loans begin to get funded, that a lot of people who are out of work right now are going to get put back on the payroll. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that has to happen for those loans to be forgivable is those employers have to go back to the head count they had in February of 2020. So the smart play for a business is to rehire everybody and then pay that money out to keep their workforce together, and then that would keep people off the unemployment benefit dole, and it kind of evens out all the different pots of money that are available.
Now, that small business laid someone off at the start of March because they had to close, and then the PPP comes out and they rehire the person. Do they pay them retroactively for the start date in February, or do they start from when they rehired them? How does that work?
I think they'd be entitled to the unemployment benefits up until the point they got rehired. Okay. And then the PPP money would be prospective from there. Now, I suppose an employer could do it retroactively if they chose to do it. They've got to spend that money. Mm-hmm. So I think it becomes a math problem. And again, that's something that you could probably work out with your boss. For me, this is just speaking with me personally, I'd rather have the money prospectively rather than going back retroactively if I could afford it, because then I know I'd be taken care of for a longer period of time into the future. Now, if I've got bills that I've got to pay that came up way back when, then then I might have a different take on that. But if I could get the unemployment benefits for the past and then get my regular salary going forward in the future, that seems to me to be the best play.
All right. And so if I'm laid off along with a bunch of my coworkers, do I personally need to file, or does that happen for me already?
Well, in that circumstance, you want to talk to your employer, because the Department of Labor has a process where they can file what they call a mass layoff form, and it's all done electronically now, of course, and that automatically makes your claim for you and really simplifies the process both for the worker and for the employer. That can be done for furloughs or layoffs, full or part-time. In other words, going back to the previous question, if an employer reduces the hours of 30 people, then generally they can file that mass layoff for the reduction in time, and that saves them from having to respond to everybody's benefits. That should all be in the system so that if you go to certify on Sunday, then it should already be there. If not, if you're at all unclear, I would go and start the process, and the software ought to alert you that the claim has already been filed through the mass layoff.
Okay. And so during this time that I've been laid off to receive benefits, will I still have to look for work so I can draw my benefits?
You still have to certify that you're looking for work, just as you did before all of this started. There was some talk that they would lift that requirement. I saw that both the federal and the state Department of Labors have said that they are loosening that requirement because they understand that jobs aren't nearly as available as they were beforehand. And so I think that as long as you're making an effort to find a job, the fact that you haven't found a job that exactly fits, I think will be okay. And if it depends on the reason that you're out of work. I mean, if you're out of work because you're sick, that you have the virus, then nobody's going to hire you. If you're out of work because you have to take care of somebody, then you're not going to be able to find a job in that circumstance, most likely. So it's really the folks that are willing, able to work, but got furloughed or got laid off because their business went out of business or has gone dark. And there may actually be jobs out there for you. I mean, if you were a server in a restaurant, there are probably grocery jobs now. There are probably delivery jobs or other jobs that are out there. So there's still that requirement that you look for work, and the Department of Labor Workforce Development Division can help you with that as well.
Fantastic. That was the top 10 questions that we had. Anything that we missed that you want to add on any of the questions and kind of this uncertain time that we're going through?
No, I think this is a tremendous opportunity for people. I've got my son, my middle child is home from college, and he said, what a lot of young people say, I'm bored, I'm this, I'm that. I said, well, he says, I want, if I were at school, I'd be learning all kinds of things. I'd be involved in things. And I said, well, there's all kinds of things online. There's YouTube, there's all kinds of ways to improve yourself online. And I think the people that don't treat this as an extended snow day, who say, okay, how best can I use this time? How can I work on my business? How can I make my business bigger and better than ever when it comes back? How can I improve my skills? Those are the folks that are really going to be winners after all of this. And, Mr. Mayor, I think it also showed me at least what is important in life and what's trivial in life. And all of a sudden to me, how much money I make, how my business grows isn't nearly as important to me as how safe my family is, and how much I miss my friendships and my relationships. So hopefully at the end of all this, we're all going to be a little bit more, maybe a little bit more mature in the way we look at the world. But I appreciate you. You're doing a great service. I know you've been doing these FaceTime and broadcasts out there, telling people what's going on and how the city of Jackson is responding. And I'll bet you that there are thousands of people out there who are a little bit more at ease every day because of the communication they're getting from you and your office.
Well, I appreciate that. That's our goal, is to communicate through this time, because we're all painting the ship as we go along right now. So, Alan, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you answering those questions that a lot of people have, and hopefully helping them navigate through this uncertain time for them.
It's my pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you at a Tiger football game soon.
Sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you.